with us, so we should definitely record this, so that I think she's having some troubles with the internet, so definitely should be able to review this. So my question is still there: which instrument uh, or which term we use for transferring chemicals from one article to another? Maybe let's say using pipette to draw one chemical and putting it in a beaker or in a conical flask, right? What term do we use? I gave a very special term, very specific term regarding this, and it's a name for a machine as well, right? It relates to a machine that you use in daily basis, in school especially, for getting water. Come on, I've given you the hint. What? God. Okay, give me your punishment. What should be the punishment for the both of you, since you don't remember the name? G Ira, what term that I suggested that you can use for pouring chemicals into any article, let's say from pipette into a flask, or getting into a pipette, taking any chemical into a pipette, drawing it? What term that we used, Ira? There's gonna be punishment on this. Join? You did not join that? Okay, the word is dispense. And I told you, you use this for the name is drawn from a device that you use for drinking water. Dispenser. Khuda ke bando. Yaad rakhna. Yeah, those are called dispensers, water dispensers, right? It dispenses a specific quantity of water as long as you keep pressing the button. It's not a tap. The moment you take your hand off the dispenser knob, it turns off the water. That's why it's called dispensing, right? Not just a water cooler, right? A water cooler could be any type, right? Even a refrigerator is a water cooler. But does it dispense water for you? No, it does not, right? Does your bottle dispense water for you? No, it does not. A dispenser is that you do something and it will give you a specific quantity of a liquid, right? So that is what we call as dispensing. Sorry? Ice dispensers, yes, ice dispenser related to water, right? Okay, so the word is dispense. Okay, now coming back to the point, right? Why do you use pipette to dispense? uh, which quantity, I should say, or why would you use pipette for dispensing any chemical? And also, what chemical would you dispense, right? Point number one: what quantity of the chemical would you dispense using a pipette, right? Pipette, we're talking about pipette. What chemical can you dispense, generally speaking, and what quantity can you dispense, and why is it important? What's the significance, you could say? Why, right? So since Ira, you did not attend, I'll repeat. We usually dispense bases or anything other than, you can't see the screen. Ira, are you able to see the screen? I just switched back. Are you able to see it now? I think there's an internet issue maybe going around. Ira, are you having the same problem? Okay, alright. Nonetheless, since this session is recorded anyway, so no troubles. I know there's some internet issue going on. I was also facing internet issue during the day, right? I couldn't work around. So okay, now what chemical? Any chemical other than the acids. Acids are not dispensed using pipette because of the dangers or risks associated, right? Even though you do have the safety pump with these, I think yeah. Please join. Please join. Oh, disconnected again. Right? Alright. Okay. So even though we do have these pipette pumps for the safety, right? But I did discuss that since these are made out of rubber, to draw in a suction, right, a negative vacuum, since rubber can react with acids or acidic fumes, so again acid not to be used using pipettes, right? At least not, it's not safe. Maybe dilute but not concentrated, not at all, no, right? Never. So this is pipette safety filler, right? But again acids are reactive, so rubbers can react with these, so we do not use this for acids. Pipettes are not used, so we usually use burettes for acid and other chemicals, right? Any other chemical you can use a pipette. No, not just that, alkali, not just alkali, any salt solution, any, I mean, water, ethanol, anything, right? Alcohols, but not acids, okay? Keep in mind, weak acid maybe, but strong acid, any strong acid, and usually we are working with strong acids, so not at all, right? Okay, so why burette? Because it is more accurate, right? Used usually to dispense acids, dispense again I'm saying, right? Can control the flow because you have a flow knob over here. You can slow it down, you can make it go fast, right? It is volumetric, right? Compared to the volumetric pipette, which has just one mark, maybe 10 ml, right? And also it can be variable, right? It can dispense any variable volume, while pipettes can only dispense this. You see as a marker, these are not markers. Keep in mind, this does not have any readings. It has only the final mark, we call as a volumetric. I told you, the when you use the word volumetric article in chemistry, that means, for example, if you have volumetric flask, right, volumetric pipette, right, or any other volumetric article, volumetric dropper, then they have fixed volume markings. That means you can only measure up to that specific volume and not less, not more. So if I have a 10 ml pipette, I cannot see 5 ml, 6 ml or any other value other than 10, right? So I have to use 10 ml value. Other than that, this is useless for me. Let's just say if I want to dispense 2 ml, then I can use twice of this, right? 2 times of this. But what about the 2 ml, right? How we're gonna get that? So that's the problem. So I will either have to use pipette 2 times, right? 2 times the pipette of 10 ml and 2 times the 1 ml dropper, right? Because dropper is also a volumetric device, right? It's a volumetric article for us, right? Beakers, measuring cylinder and burettes are variable, right? I said beaker, measuring cylinder, and finally the burette, right? And these are in the increasing order of their accuracy. So beaker is least accurate, usually has a marking of 25 to 50 ml marking, right? Each one. Measuring cylinders can measure up to from ranges from 1, or you can say 0.25 ml to 1 ml, right? And I'm talking about the resolution. This is now resolution. Resolution is, if you remember from physics, the smallest reading that you can take. These has fixed values, right? Unlike these three, right? Beaker, measuring cylinder, and burette, they can be used for variable dispensing. Number one. Secondly, their resolution is depending upon the article you're using. Beakers do not usually have lower resolution than 25 ml, right? And this is for a small beaker, right? Usually you have a 50 ml beaker, right? 25 ml beakers are rarely found, right? Test tubes do not have any marking at all, right? Okay, now for the burette, you actually have I'm saying like 0.01 ml to 0.1 ml. This is the resolution that is there. So you can see that burette is technically more accurate, that you can even measure 0.1 of an ml from it, right? And some of the ones that are available in our usual labs, they usually range from 0.1 ml to 1 ml, right? Ratings usually. The one you have in your lab is 1 ml, right? For kids, this is the resolution we get, or maybe 0.5 ml, right? Not more. इससे ज़्यादा की resolution आपके पास नहीं होगी labs में. These ones, the one I'm pointing, are highly accurate burettes, and they're only available in, these are very expensive burettes, right? Because they need to be graduated and to be more accurate. So you usually have accuracy from 0.5 ml to 1 ml resolution for burettes. Still far more accurate then the measuring cylinders that are in your lab, which is usually from 1 ml to 5 ml, right, commonly. And ranges, I told you, right, what are the common ranges for pipette. I told you, you have to please memorize these. I will show you the list, right? It's not that I'm just giving you some useless talk or something, right, boring talk. Unfortunately, as part of your syllabus, right, and you should know this. So I'm just going to the syllabus, I'm going to refer to the syllabus. You actually have to memorize, right, some of these, right. Just a moment, where is it? Yeah, right. So these are the apparatus and reagents which are commonly available. So any design of experiment problem that you have, you can only use these, not anything other than these. Okay, so you have aluminum foil, balance measures up to 50, and precision, they are telling you what precision they allow you to have, right, this much, right. Okay, beakers, right, 1 dm cube with lip, right, that is like 1 liter, 250 and 100, they don't go to 25 or 50, right. Okay, boiling tubes 150 mm to 25 mm, right, these are the values. Burettes 50 centimeter cube, and this is a specific B grade class, right. A class, the one I'm talking about is an A grade. B grade, you can check the accuracy, which is like 0.5 ml to 1 ml, right. It cannot go any lower. That is grade A, which is the one I'm talking about, right. This one is grade A. Okay, these are the ones that you can use in your experiment, none other than that, right. So conical flask 250 to 50 to 250, right. We have 50 ml, 100 ml, then 250 ml, right, 3 distributions, right. We also have a 25 ml, say centimeter cube is ml, by the way, right, but we don't have 25 ml included in IGCSE, so you cannot use that you cannot write this, that use a 25 ml conical flask to dispense 25 ml of the liquid. No, that would be considered incorrect. I'm telling you the exam requirement over here, right. Okay, measuring cylinders, you have 100, right, 50, 25 and 10 centimeter cube, right. Now 10 centimeter cube one I don't think we have in the lab, and also this is B grade for your lab, it's a lower quality, so the resolution is 1 ml or 0.5 ml for the 10 centimeter cube. For 25 and above, you have the resolution of 1 ml and above, right, not low, not smaller than that, not higher accuracy than that. Okay, are you guys getting me on this? I'm recording this so you can review this data as well, right. Then the pens for labeling glassware, pipette fillers, right, the rubber ones, the rack for test tubes, all these instruments, right, gauges that you have to remember, right. 500 gram or 1000 gram, both are available, but they're suggesting you 500 gram, right. Okay, furthermore, you have retort stands, bosses, clamps. Bosses and clamps and retort stands are very important. These are used for holding burettes or any other glassware articles, right. Now small droppers or teat pipettes, we call them, right, small pipettes, right, these are fixed values, usually up to 5 ml. I told you from 1 ml, 2 ml and 5 ml, we have 3 distributions. You can use any, so they don't have any requirements for this, you can name any of these, right. Okay, small funnels for filling burettes, right, spatula for dispensing solid chemicals, right, to move that, not dispensing but to transfer. Stirring rods for mixing or making solutions. Stirring thermometers, right, these are thermometers that you can use to stir around, right, and the graduation, or you can say the resolution, is just 1 degrees, right, the maximum range they have given you. And this, now if they tell you to measure like minus 20 degrees, then you cannot use this instrument, right, then you'll have to suggest that we'll have to do something or probably heat something or do something, right. Okay, the volumetric pipette, right, that is of only 25 centimeter cube and not more, right. Okay, then you have stopwatches with an accuracy of 1 second, right, usually the ones you use are digital ones, but they are also suggesting these, right. Okay, test tubes, these are now test tubes, not boiling tubes, right. This is 16 millimeter diameter, right, 16 millimeter in dia and 125 millimeter in length, while the boiling tube, if you look at it, is nearly twice in diameter but similar in length, right. Okay, and then you have the wash bottles. Why the wash bottles? To wash your crystals or using This uh, distilled water. Keep in mind, we don't use the term pure water. Pure water is is something else, but distilled water is deionized water, di water, and that is used so that it does not leave any salt residue behind, right? It would not add any salt or anything. And universal indicator paper, and then you have universal indicators as well, right? Reagents. So they have a list of reagents as well, right? Preparation of reagents, right? They've given you. Then dilute sulfuric acids, identify, right? These are the molarities, the chemicals that you have in the lab, right? Starch indicator, thiamolphthalene, right? Screen methyl orange, right? Methyl orange indicator, acidified aqueous potassium magnate that I've told you is very important for your IGCSE, right? Aqueous potassium magnate, right? Also known as Pinky. Then aqueous potassium iodide, also an indicator. Lime water for carbon dioxide test, right? These are telling you of the chemicals, that the reagents that you can use for identification, right? Then aqueous silver nitrate is used to identify barium, right? Insoluble salts, because if you have a chloride, then the silver will react with chloride to form an insoluble silver chloride, and it will precipitate out, right? So while all the nitrates are soluble, if you remember the solubility rules, right? All the nitrates are soluble, while the chlorides of silver, barium, and another metal, right, are not soluble, right? So again, you have to memorize those rules, right? Then sodium hydroxide, this is a chemical, but it is also used as an indicator. We'll see those and more in detail once we go into the ATP questions, right, for the ion identification, the last topic that we have, right? Then aqueous ammonia, right, that is also used. Dilute sulfuric acid, dilute nitric acid, and dilute hydrochloric acid, right? So these are the reagents that we use as identifiers as well, not just as chemicals but also for identification requirements, right? Okay, now these are the ions and their tests that are there. This chart, unfortunately you have to memorize, right? Nonetheless, no matter what you do, there is no shortcut to this one, these 2 pages you have to memorize. There is no running away from it, right? For example, they give you a gas test. A chemical was burnt and the flame was lilac. So what is the possible cation in there, right? So that would be potassium, right? So you will identify that. So since potassium is there, now you do know that, and they give you another test, right? I'll show you a paper ATP paper, right? If I have any, or otherwise I'll access one from here. That these identifications are very important, right? So you have to memorize. If you don't know these, if you don't memorize these, then unfortunately 15 marks of your ATP paper are gone, right? This is one question, only one question, and that is a mandatory question, and there is no running away from that question. Okay, are you guys clear on this? So this is, you have to memorize, right? And there is no understanding in this. It's just given facts, right? For example, carbonate ion, dilute acid, right? You add some dilute acid into any unknown chemical, right? You're testing for carbonate ion, right? So you add any dilute acid, then test for carbon dioxide, right? If anything, any compound contains a carbonate ion, then definitely you will see effervescence, right? Number one thing, bubbling, and carbon dioxide is produced only when you test for carbon dioxide as well, right? Lime water test. So add dilute acid and go for lime water test. If it is positive, then we can be very sure that the compound contains carbonate anion. Okay, now chloride ion, right? Acidify the dilute nitric acid, right? So any unknown chemical which you expect may contain chloride ion, right, you will acidify that chemical or that solution with a little bit of dilute nitric acid, right? And then and why nitric acid? So that that metal is going to react with the nitrate, forming a soluble salt, and then add aqueous silver nitrate. Since the nitrate ion is now in excess, then the silver is actually going to react with the chloride, forming white precipitate, hence telling you that there was a chloride ion involved in this chemical. So you can identify that yes, there was chlorine in there, right? For bromine, the same test is used, except now the color is from white to cream, right? The color is going to change. For different halide, just the color is the same, the test is the same, right? Color would be different for each one. Okay, let me see when people, oh, she's not able to join. Let me just leave her a text uh, Nonetheless, what happened to you? Hmm. Okay. All right. Okay. Let's get back. Right. So, then we have the iodine, the same but yellow color now, right? Then for the nitrate, now this is a different test. Now this we use the nitrate ion to test the other one. Now what if you have the nitrate itself? Now these tests are not possible because it's not gonna produce any effervescence or gas by adding dilute acid because nitrate is very reactive, right? Also, it is not going to react with nitric acid creating any insoluble salt, right, which is we call as a precipitate, right? So again a false negative. So you won't get any results. So how to test for a nitrate ion then? What you do, you add aqueous sodium hydroxide, right? Why? Because hydroxide is one thing, but nitrate ion, if you remember that electropositivity charge and the electronegativity chart from the electrolysis slides, let me open those just to give you a refresher on that, right? We had electrolysis, I guess, right? If we had the matter, yeah. Now you see the nitrate ion is above the OH ion, so definitely the nitrate ion will replace the OH ion. Okay, keep that in mind. Now as I said, all these concepts in chemistry will join in together to solve one question, right? That one ion exchange question is the most critical question in your entire uh, what we say as the, oh, where was it? Come on, yeah, right, and the whole paper, right? Okay, this tests your actual understanding of the chemistry, right? So for aqueous, we reacted with sodium hydroxide, so so it will form sodium nitrate, which is soluble, right? And then we add a little bit of aluminum, right? And why the little bit of aluminum? Because aluminum will start, sodium, and since sodium nitrate is going to be there, right? And hydroxide is there, so hydroxide and this ammonia will react, right? And if you carefully warm this up, so you give energy to the aluminum to replace the sodium over there, right? Now sodium has left hydroxide, right? Sodium has left the nitrate, right? Also, what will happen? The aluminum will try to react with the oxygen in the nitrogen. Now we have the hydroxide ion left, in which the oxygen is going to try to react with aluminum again and along with the sodium, right, to form oxide, because sodium will immediately form oxide in water, right? We know that. And or sodium hydroxide, and now the nitrogen is left. So what the nitrogen will do, it will try to steal away the hydrogen from the hydroxide and form ammonia gas, right? And how would you know about the ammonia gas? Again, you have to test for the ammonia gas, which is not given over here, but you will be given that you have discussed. If you remember, we have discussed this. We will discuss this in the experimental techniques, right? Was the test for ammonia, right? You because ammonia is a base, is caustic, so we are going to use a damp red litmus paper on the top of the test tube in which we are doing this test. And since these vapors are going, we are warming it up, so some vapors will be forming, right, of ammonia. And if ammonia is present, that then red litmus paper will turn slightly blue. And I'm saying damp red litmus paper because ammonia will definitely would want to react with water, right, for forming sodium hydroxide, and it will be a basic form of a compound, so it will definitely give you it will turn red litmus paper into blue. Are you guys clear on the nitrate test? This is the most trickier test, right, of all. Okay, this is all part of the experimental technique, that's why I'm explaining these. Okay, now for the sulfate ion, right? Now for sulfate ion, now the problem is, if you look at the electrochemical series, sulfate is pretty much on the top, so none of these acids are usable, right? Any of these acidified solutions will not be helping you to identify the sulfate ion, and that's the biggest trouble we get. Sulfate ion is the most difficult to assess, right? Even if they ask you as a topical question, right, then sulfate ion is the most difficult, and fluorine is the last. And unfortunately, I told you fluorine is not common, so we don't have much of it. So sulfate is the ultimate. So we cannot use any of these add dilute acid techniques because it's not gonna work out, right? So what we do is we use acidified dilute nitric acid, right? Now we're introducing nitrate ions, which obviously is not going to help do anything, but what it does, that in the next step we are going to add barium nitrate, right? We do know that all nitrates are soluble, right? All nitrates are soluble. Now barium is reactive, and why we created nitric acid in there? So that there is an excess of hydrogen as well, right? So hydrogen ions are also there, nitrate ion are also there, and now the barium ion is also there. Now out of the reactivity series, back again, barium is quite reactive, right? It's not there, but it is above calcium, right, in this list. So what it will do, that any salt it would have, it would not be barium sulfate, right? So it is calcium sulfate or copper sulfate or any other. So barium is going to be reactive of all of them. So the barium will replace that metal from this salt and form barium sulfate, and barium sulfate is actually white precipitate, right? And why dilute nitric acid? So that we can decompose or dilute any insoluble salt if you have, right? Let's just say if you have any insoluble, let's say iron sulfate, which is not very soluble, right? It is slightly soluble. So to make it soluble, we add dilute nitric acid in there. Are you guys getting me? Why we're adding dilute nitric acid? To make it soluble. Not every transition element. I told you only the salts of group 1A and group 2A are soluble. Transition metals are mostly, you know, some are soluble, some are not. So you have to memorize the solubility rules over there, right? If you remember, that is also the end of this slideshow, if I reckon. Not at this one, like maybe the electrolysis one, right? The acid base, yeah, right? If you remember, I did give you these rules, right? So the barium sulfates, right? Sulfates are soluble except for barium, calcium, right? So if you have calcium in there, so it is not soluble. How would you make it react? So you will have to add a little bit of nitric acid, so this calcium sulfate gets soluble or gets, you know, decomposed easily, right, and becomes soluble, and then you add your barium nitrate in there, so that the barium reacts and form white precipitate. So barium sulfate is not soluble, so it will precipitate out. Even if you're using calcium sulfate, you will still be able to identify this, right? And to test for calcium, again, simply take the solution and on a you know, any kind of a rod, adjust a droplet and take that droplet to the fire, and if it gives you orange red, then it had a calcium ion in it, right? So now you identified the compound, that the unknown compound was calcium sulfate. Are you getting me? What is the combination? So you have to do the complete test. You have to test for the gas, you have to test for the metal ion. Metal ions are easier, they just have a flame test, right? And some metal ions are not flame tested, so you have to go through this cation test as well, right? We'll come to that in a moment, right? So the last one is sulfite ion, right? And sulfite ion, this is SO3 minus 2, right? It is also more difficult than the sulfate ion, right? Unfortunately. So what we do, add acidified aqueous potassium sulfate, and what it really does, that it will change the color, right? It will just make it colorless, right? Because this sulfate requires one more oxygen to become SO4 negative, right? It becomes SO4 negative, and it yeah, now why it needs this? Because it has one less oxygen, so it will grab one oxygen from this potassium manganate solution, which was already acidified, so it should have changed color, but since it was colorful, so it will make it you know, from purple to colorless immediately, right? This is an immediate color change, right? Not a slow one. Alright, so it's easier to test, by the way, right, in that regard. So we just use one specific test for sulfate ion, and the other ones we use this, right? Also, to test for sulfur dioxide gas, you will come to this, that we also use a paper dipped in potassium manganate solution from purple to colorless. Are you getting this? So it's a common test for both the sulfur dioxide gas or sulfite ion, not SO4 negative. That has a different test. That is an insolubility test. Okay. Now for the cations, the positive metals, for aluminum, right, you have the white precipitate, right, soluble in excess, right? So eventually, if you have aluminum ions, so there is usually not soluble, so they are white precipitates, right? If you effect in sodium hydroxide, keep in mind, so if you take this salt and try to dissolve it in sodium hydroxide, any solution of aluminum, you will see white precipitate, right, which is again will be soluble if you keep on adding more aqueous hydroxide, right, giving a colorless solution. If this is positive, then it is aluminum. Then it is not positive, then you'll move on to the next one, right? Or at least test with this one, right? In aqueous ammonia, any salt of aluminum, right, any salt of aluminum will give you white precipitate once you mix with aluminum with ammonia, and it should be insoluble in 6. So in other words, if you keep on adding ammonia, you will not see dissolution of it, so that will be a confirmation that you have aluminum. Now these are just two tests, right? Effect of sodium hydroxide and effect of ammonia for positive metal, right, positive ions, right? The only difference is in the effects it will have on different ones, right? With ammonia, definitely ammonium is not going to be effective on this, so the ammonia test is not used, right, because it is already an ammonium ion, right? Now in sodium hydroxide, it will produce ammonia, right? Ammonia produced on warming. And again, how to test for ammonia gas? Turns red, damp red litmus blue, okay? So you'll be sure. So with these, you have to use all these tests in a connected way, okay? Now for calcium, you get white precipitate which is insoluble in excess in sodium hydroxide. Now this is, as I said, very confusing, so you have to memorize these, right? Yeah, you have to write these again and again and again, right? Although from this year onward, they will provide you this sheet at the end of the paper, but I do not recommend this, okay? So you have to memorize this one way or the other. It is very important, because this will be given to you in paper 6, but what you're gonna do about paper 4 then? Because this will not be given to you in paper 4, and there are some questions relating to paper 4 with these tests, right? And they ask you what would be the result of it, right? You will see those once I solve a paper for you, right? You will see that there's a sulfate ion test, and they haven't given you this sheet, right? Because this will be given to you in the ATP, right? And that is from this year onward, which is like your good luck. Ali, Safwan, and all those previous badges, Ali unfortunately had to memorize all of this, right? He went through this the effort of memorizing this whole chart, even for the ATP, in which you have to do the whole test as a whole. ये आपको सारा का सारा ही करना पड़ता है वहाँ पे, right? Okay. For chromium, you will get green precipitate, which will be soluble in excess, again in sodium hydroxide, right? Copper की बात करेंगे, तो it will create a light blue precipitate, which will be insoluble in excess, sodium hydroxide, right? Now for iron, positive 2. Remember, iron has two states, so they both behave differently and they both have different colors. Plus 2 is associated with green compounds usually, and plus 3 is associated with red compounds. So definitely the plus 3 is the one that we call as rusting, right? Not the plus 2. Plus 2 is iron oxide, which actually prevents rusting, right? And plus 3 is the one that causes rusting to continue, right? Zang jo lagta hai lohe ko, that is the plus 3 one, and the one that we put a paint on to prevent rusting is actually the plus 2 one, okay? For the plus 2, you get green precipitate. अब प्रॉब्लम यहाँ पे देखो, गौर से देखो, क्रोमियम का भी टेस्ट ग्रीन है और आयरन का भी टेस्ट ग्रीन हो गया, राइट? अनफॉर्चुनेटली दिस कॉजेस अ कंफ्यूजन, राइट? नाउ द डिफरेंस इज कि क्रोमियम वाला सॉल्युबल हो जाएगा इफ यू कीप ऑन एडिंग सोडियम हाइड्रोक्साइड, एंड द आयरन विल रिमेन इन soluble in excess, right? And turns brown near the surface on standing, right? थोड़ी देर अगर आप रखेंगे तो ये ब्राउन हो जाएगा. दैट विल बी रिप्रेजेंटिंग दैट सम ऑफ द आयरन इज ऑल्सो टर्निंग टू प्लस 3 बिकॉज इट हैज एक्सेस टू hydroxide ions, so it has access to oxygen as well, right? So definitely some you will see reddish brown metal, rusting metal to be deposited, right? So that is the difference कि ये excess में soluble है, iron नहीं होगा, right? Okay, then for the iron 3, red brown precipitate insoluble in excess. तो iron के दोनों insoluble हो गए, right? These are insoluble. Okay, now for zinc you get white precipitate, right? zinc और aluminum के white है, और बाकी ट्रांजिशन, क्योंकि ये जिंक है तो ट्रांजिशन मेटल, लेकिन यूजली क्रोमियम और कॉपर और आयरन के कलर्ड कंपाउंड्स होते हैं, ठीक है? आयरन, कॉपर इज एसोसिएटेड विद ब्लू, क्रोमियम एंड आयरन आर एसोसिएटेड विद ग्रीन, एंड आयरन आल्सो हैड द रेड कलर, राइट? एंड अमोनिया का कोई कलर नहीं होता, इट इज ट्रांसपेरेंट, राइट? Okay, and the similar tests are also there with this one. Okay, now I'm not gonna go and explain these because I need to get back to the experimental techniques. Okay, now these are the gas tests that we have already discussed, right? Ammonia के लिए red litmus paper, carbon dioxide के लिए lime water, chlorine के लिए bleach कर देता है litmus paper को white कर देगा, right? Hydrogen gives you a pop sound with lighted splint. Now remember the difference between lighted splint, that means वो स्टिक जिसको आग लगी हुई हो, दैट विल क्रिएट द पॉप. एंड ऑक्सीजन के लिए हम जलती हुई स्टिक कभी यूज नहीं करते, वी यूज अ ग्लोइंग स्प्लिंट. ग्लोइंग से मुराद है नाउ द फायर इज एक्सटिंग्विश बट इट इज स्टिल रेड, राइट? इफ यू हैव एवर यूज्ड अ मैच स्टिक, when it blows out it is still red, right? That is called a glowing splint, right? So if you have a glowing splint and you put it in a test tube of oxygen, it will again catch fire immediately, right? And why द फायर एक्सटिंग्विशेस? बिकॉज क्योंकि वो ऐश बन रही होती है तो ऑक्सीजन की सप्लाई रुक जाती है उसकी, ठीक है? तो वहाँ पे फिर कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड का रिएक्शन खत्म हो जाता है, कार्बन मोनोऑक्साइड बन रही होती है व्हेन इट इज ग्लोइंग, राइट? दैट इज व्हाई दे से कि कोयला नहीं यूज करना चाहिए. कोल, डू नॉट बर्न कोल इन अ क्लोज एनवायरनमेंट बिकॉज इट प्रोड्यूसेस कार्बन मोनोऑक्साइड compared to normal flames or fire which produces carbon dioxide, which is not harmful. Carbon monoxide on the contrary is poisonous for hemoglobin. Okay, and then you have these metal flame colors. So आप कंपाउंड को या सॉल्ट को या सॉल्ट सोल्यूशन को किसी भी तरीके से फ्लेम पे अगर रखो एक ड्रॉपलेट को, तो you'll see that if it's lithium you'll have red color, bright red, sodium yellow, potassium lilac, right? Orange red, light green, and then blue green. Okay, and this is copper one is the most beautiful color that you can see. बेरियम का है लेकिन बेरियम ज़रा एक्सपेंसिव मेटल है, कॉपर इज़ अ कॉमन मेटल, सो यू कैन एक्चुअली डू दिस, राइट? तो ये आप ये घर पे भी आप कोई कॉपर वायर देखो तो उसको आप चूल्हे के ऊपर रखोगे ना थोड़ी देर, यू जस्ट कीप दैट वायर एंड मेक श्योर यू डू नॉट बर्न योर हैंड बिकॉज कॉपर इज़ अ वेरी गुड थर्मल कंडक्टर. सो मेक श्योर you're holding it with some insulator or something, and then just put it over a stove, and then you'll see that the color is going to be bluish green. Also for the sodium test, you can do this test at home. You have normal table salt, so just do try this when your mom is not around, otherwise you're going to get smacked from your mom, right? So just take some table salt and put it on a burning stove, right? थोड़ा सा उसके ऊपर sprinkle करें from a little height. You'll see that the color it grows, you know, yellowish, orange yellowish, right? And for calcium you can actually do this at home as well. You know, you do have calcium oxide available, or I can give you some samples from school just to give it, you know, a test once the school opens up, right? Barium I can also do the test in the lab a lot. I can, other than come on, what we call as chuna, whitewash, come on, commonly available salt. यार क्या हो गया खुदा के बंदे? Calcium, yeah. So sodium is also available, readily available. Copper is also readily available. Barium and potassium, that I can provide you some salts to do this test, but they are poisonous salts, so I would rather do those tests for you in the lab, right? Sometime whenever if I got any time free, I can just call you guys up and you know, can show you, or you can visit chemistry lab. You can ask Sir Ghulam to do this on my account. Sir Wes asked us that you could just give us any of these tests, थोड़ा सा flame test करके दिखा दें, colors दिखा दें, then he'll show you. He is a very nice guy, right? Okay, now these were the gas tests that you can do, and again this is available at the end of your syllabus paper just before your periodic table, right? So need to be memorized, right? The reagents that are used need to be memorized. The names, I don't want you to memorize these molarities, you don't need to, right? You just need to know which compounds are being used. And then these instruments, please keep on going through them over and over again, because these are mandatory for you to know. In case of any design of experiment question, you will be asked that which instrument was missing or which instrument would you like to use, then unfortunately you'll have to write those, right? अगैन ये आपको ये देखें, ये आइडेंटिफिकेशन ऑफ आयंस और गैसेस का लास्ट टॉपिक था जो हमने अभी पहले कर लिया, ठीक है? वी जस्ट डिड दिस टॉपिक, राइट? दिस वाज द एंड ऑफ आवर टॉपिक फॉर एक्सपेरिमेंटल टेक्निक्स. ओके, alright, now coming back to our original topic, I think we've got a few minutes left, right? Unfortunately we won't be able to complete this, right? But okay, oh yeah, whatever, don't, yeah, but still, right? I will, no, this is very important topic, so we need to go through the details, right? Yahan detail wala kaam, right? Because it's ATP, so I need to go through detail. Again, another thing to memorize, right? The indicators that you use in IGCSE. You have litmus solution, which is red in acid, blue in alkali. Litmus solution, not litmus paper, right? Litmus papers are simple. Now methyl orange, phenolphthalein, and thiomolphthalein, right? Now these are very difficult names. Thymolph, right? We use thymolphthalein, right? This is how we pronounce it in a single go. Thiomolphthalein, right? And phenolphthalein, right? Phenol, again I told you these are aromatic ring compounds. Phenol is this circular compound, so phenolphthalein is, you will see this symbol on the bottle as well, right, in the lab. Phenolphthalein, right? Phenolphthalein is colorless in acid, right? Thiomolphthalein is also colorless in acid. They only give colors in alkali. So if you want to test an acid base titration, any acid plus base reaction, and you want to know whether the acid was cleared, right, acid was consumed from a reaction, so what you will do is that you will add few droplets of these colorless ones, right, because the acid, they are not going to give any color. So once the base has completely neutralized the acid and you get even one or two molecules excess, you will start to see pinkish color or bluish color, okay, in the presence of alkali, the moment you cross the neutralization point, right? Okay, although at neutral point they are also colorless, so you don't get to know, so you have to add this, add the base as excess. Keep in mind, these need excess addition of alkali, right, which you are not allowed in in some of the questions, right? So it depends which one you're going to use, okay? So there's a question which one you're going to use. Usually methyl orange is the one that you use mostly, right, because it is red in acid, yellow in alkali, and orange in neutral. So it shifts from red to orange and from orange to yellow upon this neutralization reaction. So you can actually identify the neutral point, right, when the acid base reaction has completed, right, acid plus base reaction, because titration is all about acid base reaction, to identify the unknown acid or unknown base. Okay, are you guys getting me? This is what we call as titration, right, to identify how much H positive ions or OH negative ions were there, right, without using because the pH test only gives you an average, it does not give you any specific value, right, it only gives you a comparative relation, whether it's a strong or a weak acid. But how strong and how weak, can you have a calculative value? No, because pH test, right, pH test is only a qualitative test, right, qualitative test, it does not give you any quantity. So we use this titration, which is a quantitative test now. All right, now here I'm going to use the word qualitative, right, where you cannot quantify, and then you have the quantifying test we call as the quantitative test, right, quantity, you get a quantity as well, right? So to understand the quantity of acid or base available in a solution, right, the strength of it, we use these tests, and usually methyl orange is used because this has the most versatile range, right? Now these are the three that you use. They can give you any new one as well, right? Bromo, methylone, right, there are many more, but in that case they will tell you the color scheme of it. These three, they will not tell you the color schemes, so you have to memorize this chart. It is again available in your chemistry book. Wait for the new edition of the chemistry book to come around, or you can buy an old book, because the topic is not gonna change much and none of these tests are gonna change. Unlike physics, chemistry is not gonna change much, right, because these are facts and these cannot be changed, right? Okay, now another qualitative test that you have done in grade 8th was a chromatography, right? मैम क्या कहते हैं आयरा वगैरह को तो इनको करवाई भी होगी मैम ने, right? So they were doing these tests. I also did this test, but remember at that point it was a qualitative test for you. Now we are going to quantify chromatography, because chromatography is a highly quantitative test. We actually never thought of it as a quantitative test, because at your level now you do remember chromatography, right? That means differentiating chemicals depending upon the color scheme, right? Color separation we called it, right? So we used an ink, and then we used a pencil line, right? So we'll talk about these. What are these, right? So we call this as pencil line as the baseline, right? This is the solvent, right, in there, right, the solvent level, right, initial solvent level. Remember, your baseline or pencil line should be a little above, at least 1 inch is a minimum requirement, right? 1 inch. Why not? Because if you dip it too much in there, then your ink will dissolve into the solvent rather than climbing up. You getting my point? Right, so remember the precautions as well, right? So your ink will dissolve into the solvent before it climbs up, so your solvent needs to be below, at least 1 inch below the pencil line. Now how much the solvent climbs is what we call as the solvent front, right? Solvent front, you guys have discussed all these terms in grade 8, so this is nothing new, right? And how much and any dye moves up we call as the marking, right? Now if you remember, we were yesterday talking about locating agent, right? In polymer chemistry, that we were doing one question. I told you that locating agent is very important. Now locating agent is used for colorless, right, colorless compounds when done with chromatography. So what we do is use a locating agent, maybe these indicators of sorts, right? Any of these indicators or any special reagent we use, right? Maybe for starch, if you're doing, so starch is colorless, so we use a starch indicator. If you remember, in the syllabus list, starch indicator is given, so you can list it in your experiment. You can use that in your apparatus, right? A starch indicator, and then you can use it to color, right? It will give you an iodized brownish, purplish brown, dark purplish brown color. Forgot to continue my recording. This should have been recorded because it's a very critical topic. Yeah, now it's recorded, right? So for the RF value, remember, whatever the value you're given, you're going to mark it over here, right? So again, if you have the 0.6, they want you to identify a list of compounds that they will give you several values: 0.5, 0.3, 0.4, right? Which one is this? So 0.5 is this one, right? B. And 0.4 or 0.3 could be your A. Okay, now this is one thing, right? Also, what does this 0.9 suggest to you? Now this is a very critical question which is rare. What does it suggest? This suggests, if you remember, कि देखो आपने ग्रेड 8 में पढ़ा था कि ये इतना ज़्यादा ट्रैवल करता है जितनी इसकी solubility अच्छी होगी. That means C were more soluble in the solvent than A. Do you understand this fact? Right? अच्छा, मजे की बात है, अगर मैं कहूँ कि ये तीनों इक्वली सॉल्युबल थे, इनकी सॉल्युबिलिटी बहुत अच्छी थी, तो क्या अब आप कह सकते हो? एक फैक्टर आ गया, नंबर 1, आरएफ वैल्यू आपको क्या बताती है? एक फैक्टर, राइट? एक तो ये आपको बताती है रेट ऑफ ट्रैवल, राइट, कि कितना ज़्यादा ट्रैवल किया, क्योंकि टाइम तो आपने तीनों को इक्वली दिया ना, राइट? एक तो ये होगा. सेकंड, ये आपको बता रहा है सॉल्युबिलिटी रेट, कि कौन सा ज़्यादा सॉल्युबल था, राइट? अच्छा, रेट ऑफ ट्रैवल को मैं यहाँ रीफ्रेज करूंगा मैं एक और चीज से, क्योंकि रेट ऑफ ट्रैवल, लेट्स जस्ट से इफ दे वर इक्वली सॉल्वेबल, राइट, इफ दे सजेस्ट यू दैट दे वर इक्वली सॉल्वेबल, देन व्हाट वाज द डिफरेंस बिटवीन ए, बी एंड सी? व्हाई द वैल्यूज आर डिफरेंट? नाउ इट रिप्रेजेंट्स मॉलिक्यूलर मास, राइट? इफ यू रिमेंबर डिफ्यूजन, तो डिफ्यूजन याद है ना कि हैवियर मॉलिक्यूल ट्रेवल्स स्लोअर. तो यहाँ पे अगर ये तीनों इक्वली सॉल्वेबल थे, लेट्स से आई गिव यू NaCl, I give you calcium carbonate, which is also water soluble, readily soluble, right? And I give you sodium bicarbonate, right? इन तीनों के different है, तो definitely obviously मैंने गलत लिख दिया, ये NaCl होगा because ये सबसे ज़्यादा ट्रैवल करेगा, सबसे कम मास इसका है. कैल्शियम कार्बोनेट का मास ज़रा ज़्यादा होगा, और सोडियम, आई मीन दिस इज गोइंग टू बी NaHCO3 बिकॉज उसका मास कैल्शियम कार्बोनेट से भी कम है, राइट? कैल्शियम कार्बोनेट विल ट्रैवल द लीस्ट, ऑल्दो तीनों रेडली सॉल्वेबल हैं पानी के अंदर, लेकिन इनका जो हाइट अचीव्ड है वो तीनों की डिफरेंट होगी. रीजन, NaCl इज लाइटर, इट विल ट्रैवल द मोस्ट. बाइकार्बोनेट इज अ लिटिल massive than NaCl, तो ये थोड़ा उससे कम ट्रैवल करेगा, और कैल्शियम कार्बोनेट is having more mass than these two, then it will travel the least in the same amount of time, right? Remember, time is fixed, right? Time is fixed for all dyes, किसी को separate नहीं देना. Are you clear on this? Okay, now we'll definitely see you back tomorrow inshallah, but I will repeat this tomorrow right, with some questions as well. But थोड़ा सा इसको faster मैं discuss करूँगा, then I'll go into the questions. Okay, then I really want your participation tomorrow क्योंकि they'll be attending that as a new topic, but you already have done this with me, so I want you to be participating in the questions. Okay, Ira? Okay, take care, beta. Allah Hafiz.